Today is May the 3rd, 2024. We are with Dan and Jeannette Voelker, longtime members of the Globe Arizona Stake. Like to start with Sister Voelker. Wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your background, growing up in the Globe Stake. Maybe tell us a little bit about your family experiences while you were growing up.
Well, I was born in Miami. My parents, Lawrence and Sandra Miller, moved here, I think in 1975, possibly 74, something like that. And my dad is a dentist here in town. He was a dentist in the on the San Carlos Reservation first, and then they moved into town. And I was born September 3rd, 1977, and just loved growing up here. I have 6 brothers and sisters. My sister Marisa was born here, and then me, Kristen, and Jordan were all born here.
What was it like being a member of the church growing up here in a community where, although there are other members of the church, certainly the majority of the people your fellow classmates in school would have belonged to other faiths? Or what was it like to be a member of the church in that environment?
It was very normal for me. I didn't know any different, but I loved growing up here. I loved the community, all the people. I had friends of all different faiths, and sometimes my mom and dad would let us go to a different church for like somebody's event or a quinceañera or something like that. But we just had a lot of fun. Lots of different people, lots of different environments, and I loved it. I loved being a member of the church here. We had lots of fun. I do remember going to church. I think I remember, or maybe it's just a story I've heard, but I remember being in the old building that's now the mortuary downtown, and just it being to me, it was very dark. It was very enclosed. I don't know. That's just my memory. My mom liked to tell the story of when they used to do Halloween, like a haunted house in the basement of that building, and that the baptismal font was down there, I guess, and that my brother Matthew was scared to death of getting baptized because that's where the haunted house was, and so he was scared of that part of the church. So that's a fun story my mom used to tell about that church. But here, I was basically here in this building, the Stake Center, for most of my life, and I love it.
Now, so do you remember when the Stake Center was built?
Yes, the memories I have, I don't know how old I was. I'd have to do the math of what year it was built, but I remember being up here. The parents would bring their whole family up here to help, and the kids felt like they were part of building the church because they would have us move a pile of rocks from one side to the other in the parking lot, and we felt like we were helping to build the church. And that's why I have a very great fondness for this building, because I helped build it.
So with the rock moving, was there a need to move the rocks, or was there a need to keep the kids out of the other projects?
Probably keep the kids out of the hair of the adults who are doing actual construction work. But yeah, that was just something we always did. When they were building the Stake Center, we were helping. That's how we felt like we were helping.
How did it feel once the Stake Center was built and you were able to use the building and have activities and church and everything else here?
Well, I don't have any specific memory of when, that transition of when we started coming to church here, but it's just always been my building. I take a lot of ownership, or what's the word? I just love this building. It's just a very safe place for me. And then eventually, when we moved back, raising our kids here too, it's just where we belong.
So, growing up, are there any particular activities or events here at the church that you have particularly good memories or interesting memories of?
Memories I have are, we did always did like a Pioneer Days. We had lots of fun. I have a very strong memory of doing parades for Pioneer Day, that we would dress up in our costumes that my mom would make, our Pioneer bonnets and the Pioneer dresses, and then the boys would have their vests and everything, and we would do a parade around the building in the parking lot, and we would ride our bikes and decorate them with red, white, and blue streamers, and put things in the spokes to make the card in the spokes to make noise, and we would just have like a parade around the whole thing. And sometimes we would there was something we'd had an activity where we made paper aprons with like crepe paper ties or something like that, but there was always some kind of major activity involved with having that celebration and the food and everything. But I remember that. I remember we would do road shows where we'd be up here for all day long, and like start in the morning and get put into different groups, and then by the end of the day we had a play, or we called it play in a day. Is that what we called it? I think it was play in a day. And we would perform a play at the end of the day, and everybody would have some fun, silly thing that we would result in that. So that was fun.
What about seminary?
Seminary. I went to all 4 years of seminary. We had release time seminary, which is when it was 5th, 6th, and 7th hour of the last part of the day. One of those hours you would go walk across the street from the high school to it was a house on the corner across the street, and we loved seminary. I loved seminary. We had 2 teachers. We had Brother Woodhouse for the first 2 years, and then Brother Morgan was the second 2 years, and we just loved being there. It was a gathering place. We ate lunch in the seminary building most of the time. I babysat for both of my seminary teachers' children. Felt like we learned. I feel like I should have learned more, but but just learned so much about the gospel, and we just had fun. We just had a lot of fun. We would go do things that I don't know if the kids now get to experience that with having that release time during the day, experiencing that.
And so for release time, like if you had seminary during 5th hour, you were excused from school, you'd go over there, do seminary, and then come back for 6th hour.
Yep. And if you went to seminary, you had to go all 7 hours. So like, as some seniors are able to take, only work, go to school for like half the day because they have other credits. Because we had release time, we had to go all 7 hours, all 4 years. So it wasn't even an option for me personally to be able to like have less classes my senior year, but that was just something that we knew if we took seminary, we went all 7 hours.
What did your non-member friends think about like release time seminary? Did they think, oh, why do they get to go? Or what was their reaction?
I don't know. I feel like it was just normal. It was just what we always did. It was extremely normal for us to go to seminary. Nobody gave us a hard time of our friends. But then the other side of it is I had my year, I had an amazing group of LDS friends. There was a lot of us, more than any of my siblings ever had. So they could probably speak better to having less LDS friends and more non-member friends. But I was really lucky that I had, there was probably 6 or 7 of us that were all LDS, and the few that weren't just came with us. We had a few kids that they came with us and were very, very accepted. Our seminary teachers were amazing. They were a huge part of our life and made some serious, very core memories with them. So our non-member friends felt very, as far as I know, felt very accepted and loved, and they were just part of what we did.
Did the seminary building, being so close to the high school, did it become a gathering place even for high school students who weren't members of the church?
Sorta. Like I said, we would eat lunch there, and so other people would come. I don't think it was too much of a gathering place beyond those things that we were doing there, but we did have an experience. I don't know if this is a good story or not, but there was a church across the street from the high school that they liked to give us a hard time when we walked to seminary, and they would say unkind things to us, and one friend I remember was very vocal back to him, and when we got back to the seminary building, or on our way, we got in there and we were all upset because of some of the things that were being said to us. Our seminary teacher, and I think it was Brother Woodhouse, I believe that was the year of Brother Woodhouse, I could be wrong, but he gave us a really strong lesson and worked it into the seminary, the class, that how we should react to other people's comments or dislike or the differences from members, non-members, and that we're all God's children, and we gotta love them and be kind no matter what people say. And that was something that's always stuck with me, a lesson that's always stuck with me about how we all are God's children, so we all have to live in this world together and make it as best we can.
Well, Brother Voelker, you grew up in Globe, but you weren't a member of the church when your family didn't belong to the church when you were born. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and maybe discuss what it was like growing up in Globe, not a member of the church, but having friends and acquaintances who were, and what that was like?
Okay. I'm originally from Tucson, and we were Southern Baptists, me and my family. And I remember from even a young age in our Sunday schools at our Baptist church, we'd have lessons about the Mormons and how they try to get you to join their cult because they trick youth into doing these activities. And so that was my initial background of what I knew about the church. And so my family eventually moved to, it turned out to be me and my mom ended up moving to Globe for my freshman year of high school. And I did all 4 years in Miami. And then I wasn't a member, but it turns out that most of the people I started associating with were members of the church. And so I naturally gravitated towards them because they just were nicer people than the average at the high school. And so I ended up becoming friends with them. I ended up dating a girl for a couple of years that was a member of the church. And so she was a huge influence on what I thought about the church members, because I had a very negative perception in the beginning. And then when I got to know them, I realized that everything that I had learned in the past was not true. So that was my experience during high school. But the only seminary experience I had was we walked by the seminary building we had always walked to go eat lunch in Miami, and the seminary building there is in the middle of a field, or it was back in that day, and I don't know, we just walked by the building and I was like, oh, I don't know what that is. And they explained it to me that they had a seminary class in there. But
So how did you? Can you tell us a little bit about your conversion story?
yeah, so I started taking missionary discussions when I was in senior year of high school, and my mom was very much against me joining the church, and so for every time I had a missionary lesson and assignments to read from the missionaries, she would hand me anti-Mormon literature and assign me things to read also at the same time, and ended up having a fun game of just trying to argue with the missionaries for 3 different sets that I had coming into the house, and so they basically gave up. Well, I think they gave up on me, or I just told them I wasn't interested at the time. And so it wasn't until my freshman year of college, when I didn't have my mom's influence of being against the church, that I took the missionary discussions again, and I just actually listened and prayed and read, and then I was able to gain a testimony from that I knew the church was true, and then I couldn't deny it anymore. And so I called my mom and let her know that I was getting baptized, and she was not happy. And on the day of my baptism, she came down with my brother-in-law and sister, and they were going to kidnap me so that I couldn't be baptized. And so anyway, they were mostly joking about that, I think, but they decided that they just weren't going to support that activity, and so they left, and I went, and my best friend from high school ended up baptizing me.
Who is that?
Brandon Dorothy, who, that's how I met Jeannette, actually, because Brandon Dorothy was dating Jeannette during high school, so we knew each other as friends, but we weren't interested in each other at all, and yeah, so Brandon and Dorothy was my best friend, and then my girlfriend at the time, her name was Candace. Alexander, and Candace ended up being roommates with Jeannette in college, and eventually we separately ended our relationships. And then a summer after it was after freshman year. After freshman year, I saw Jeannette at a Fry's, and I became interested, and then I asked her out, and so we started dating from there.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Grand Canyon University, which is a private Baptist school in Phoenix, and Jeannette was going to EAC. And so I ended up dating 2 different girls from EAC during the college, so I ended up driving to EA a lot. But
Did you do all your college at Grand Canyon, or?
yeah, I did 2 years there, and then I didn't finish my degree. I went into law enforcement, because I was actually going to be a nurse in the Army, and I don't like needles, I discovered, and so nursing wasn't going to work out very well. But I was working security at the college, and I had a strong interest in law enforcement, and so I ended up going into that field instead.
So, how long did it take? How long did the 2 of you court before you got married?
Well, we dated one summer for about a month, but I think it's just that Jeannette wanted to make out all the time, and then she ghosted me. Oh, that's the new term these days. She decided to ignore me for a while, and so we didn't date. We dated for a month during the summer, and then when we went back to school, she stopped talking to me.
He would call me, and I would tell my roommates to tell him I wasn't there because I didn't want to talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
I was being a brat. But then the next summer, when we both came back home, it just was different. He was different. I was different. We'd both grown up a lot, and we started. He asked me out. He kept asking me out. The first summer, he kept asking me out to go out on a Sunday, and I told him, I don't go out on Sundays. And then finally he got the hint, and he asked me out for a different day. And then after that, it was like, I guess that was the first summer, not the second summer. Mm-hmm. But the second summer, we just started hanging out and spending more time together. And that was the end of that.
Was this after you got baptized?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was baptized my freshman year of college in September. So that would have been September of 95. Yep. And then, so then we started dating, and then we were down in the valley shopping at a store, and it was a mall, and then we went to a ring store, and I said, "Oh, which one do you like?" And she picked one out, and so I bought it, and then she realized it was serious.
Well, we had talked about it.
Yeah,
so
we had discussed it.
Very much prepared for that, but I was not prepared for him to buy the ring right in front of me.
So after you got married, where did you live?
We first were living in Phoenix. I was working security down at a mall, the Mills, and Jeannette was doing dental assisting. And so we lived in Phoenix for a few months, and then we moved to Mesa. And then at the time I was applying for a bunch of law enforcement jobs, and I was hired by the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office. And so we ended up moving to Baghdad, Arizona, which is in the absolute middle of nowhere. And we lived there for almost 2 years.
Well, we lived in Prescott.
Well, for the academy.
Yeah.
And then we moved down to Baghdad for the next year and a half. Started our family, and then when we had our twins, boy and girl twins, and then Samantha, we decided we wanted to be closer to family, and so I left the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office and joined the Gila County Sheriff's Office so that we could move back to Globe. And from there, we moved into the First Ward, because that's where unfortunately, we had to move into Jeanette's parents' house for a month, because the house that we were trying to buy didn't close right away, and so we were stuck without a place to live for the longest month of our marriage.
It was hard.
And so anyway, but it was great. And then finally we found a house in First Ward that we could afford, because the deputy's pay is extremely low. But we found a house that we could afford, and we moved into our first house in First Ward. And man, when was that? That was 2001? No, it was 2001 when we moved into First Ward. And we lived in that house for a while, and
Maddie.
We had Maddie, and so now we're up to 3 kids. It was a 3-bedroom house, but it was kind of small, and so we realized we needed a bigger house, and we found our house in Second Ward, and they were trying to call me as Elders Quorum president right at that time, and I was like, oh, well, we just put an offer on this house, and so I thought I was escaping a calling, and I was like, ooh, outsmarted them. And so as soon as we go over to Second Ward, I was called as Elders Quorum president. I was like, oh, you can't run away from callings. It just doesn't work that way. So then we were there until 2006. And then I changed jobs from the sheriff's office to DPS, and that forced us to move into Wickiup, which is another town in the middle of nowhere between Wickenburg and Kingman. And we were there for 2 years before we can actually get reassigned to come back to Globe, because we owned our house in Globe still, and we wanted to move back. There just wasn't a slot when I was hired with DPS. And so when we could, we moved back, and then we raised our kids from 2008 on until Tabby's graduating in a month from basically today. And then we'll be empty nesters in the Globe area.
So what was it? So mainly you raised your family here in Globe.
Mostly, yeah.
What was that like? What kind of experiences do you have? How did that feel?
It was really nice having them in a small town, because I don't know, it just seems like everybody's watching out for each other to help them out in a small town. And then there was an awesome experience, Moroni's Quest, that all 3 of our daughters were able to attend at the same time, and we were there helping, and that was a really huge. Was Brendan there too?
I think so.
I think he was 2019, maybe. He might have been.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
But we love raising
yeah.
our kids here.
It's great.
Tell us a little bit about the Moroni's Quest event.
Okay, so that was a multi-stake. I think there was 3 stakes involved where they basically did scenes from the Book of Mormon, and when I'm talking scenes, they built a scale model of a ship for the ship. There was a 3-story building for the great and spacious building that was made out of scaffolding that was literally 3 stories high and made out of canvas with projectors on it. Um, it looked like almost like a movie studio set and all these different things that were going on. And so we were up there to help set some stuff up, and then I ended up getting onto the building crew, and I just helped the building crew the entire time. So I was constantly taking sets down and putting sets up, but all the kids that went had a wonderful, wonderful spiritual experience. It was just so strong when they were there. So, and you could feel it even being there as an adult. It was just, it was
So
a
cool.
great time.
So, any other particular events or activities that were eventful with your children growing up here that stand out?
Just all the primary day activities with the kids, running around, splashing in water, and
There's always water involved.
there's always water involved, and the trunk or treat. We love trunk or treat.
Yeah. When the kids were little and trunk or treat was a more involved experience. It was games and food and all kinds. It was last for 3 or 4 hours. It was a lot. It's a lot more work, but it was fun for them. They loved going to trunk or treat, and then the whole community comes. It's not just us. It's everybody. It's tons of people. So.
Well, tell us about trunk or treat. I mean, you might assume that everybody knows what that is,
okay.
but maybe in the future they won't. What
Okay,
was
so
trunk or
to
treat?
explain trunk or treat, basically everyone gets their cars and they back into the parking spaces so that the kids can walk around the sidewalk, and then they go to each car, and it's a safe place to have trick or treating. Basically, the kids are in costumes and say trick or treat, and they get a treat from everybody, and they go around 3 or 4 or 5 times until everybody runs out of candy.
When you say go around the
entire church.
entire church
Yeah.
building. And of course, there's a parking lot that goes around the entire church
Yeah,
building.
so
Yeah.
we just go around the sidewalk and go to all the cars.
And that way, it's a safer place instead of having to constantly check your kid's candy to see if someone's putting razor blades in it or something crazy like from the 80s. That's the big scare.
Yeah, when
When we were kids, that was the big scare. Everybody's going to put razor blades and needles inside of your candy, so you had to make sure the packages weren't punctured. I would eat Snickers like there's no tomorrow. But anyway, that was always a big fear when you're growing up as a kid from the 80s, and so it's nice to have a safe place to take your kids where you know there's not going to be any serious
And
problems.
as far as like a Halloween memory, that's something. Growing up in Globe, that was something that, where the neighborhood I grew up in, I mean, it's a pretty large neighborhood, and we would be out for hours and hours, and that was just one of those fun things that, I mean, just in general, the neighborhood I grew up in was very kid friendly, and we just were always at everybody's houses running around, and Halloween was a big event where we were out forever, and it was just a lot of fun.
Brother Voelker, you had mentioned your mother wasn't real supportive, or perhaps wasn't supportive at all when you joined the church. Did things change over time? Did she accept the fact that you had joined?
They did accept the fact that we joined the church, and eventually my sister, brother-in-law, and mom were all baptized, but they weren't ever really active. And then my niece and nephew were also baptized. I think I did those. Yeah. But again, they weren't active in the church, and so they were just always on the, we're here, it's okay, but
they've always been very supportive of his decision,
of our decision afterwards.
And we love them. They're very much a strong part of our life.
Well, I've got 2 things. And first is, I want to give you an opportunity if there's something you've thought of that you think, oh, we should share this to do that. And I'd also like to invite each of you to leave a brief testimony with us.
Memories.
Not particularly. I'll start off with the testimony, though. I know the church is true. I know that the church was restored by the prophet Joseph Smith, and that we're currently led by a prophet today. I know this is like I know anything else that has been confirmed to me through the Spirit, and there's no other church I'd even consider going to, because I know I'm in the right spot.
I can ditto everything you just said. It's just being raised in the church is just part of my life. It's just who I am, but I have found out for myself and gained my own testimony, and I know that this church is true. I love that we have a living prophet on the earth today, and the Book of Mormon. There's no denying that this is the true church, and I love it.
Well, thanks to both of you for visiting with us. Appreciate your stories. And with that will conclude our little interview today. Thank you again very much.
You're welcome. You have a great day.